Imagine waking up one morning to find everything you've ever built slipping through your fingers. Your empire, your reputation, your influence, all reduced to nothing more than a memory. Now, picture yourself making an outlandish decision. You, once the most powerful man in the world, step into a world so far removed from your comfort zone that even you start to question whether it's all a huge mistake. Well, that's exactly what Donald Trump, the former president, was about to do. The news had spread quickly across the country. Trump, the mogul, the politician, the larger-than-life figure, was going undercover at Tesla. No one knew exactly why or how this could possibly end well, but the idea itself was enough to set social media on fire. "What in the world is he thinking?" the headlines screamed. "Is this some sort of publicity stunt?" The rumor mills churned, but in truth, no one had the slightest idea. Trump was sitting at his marble desk in Trump Tower, staring out over the New York skyline. The penthouse suite was just as luxurious as ever. Plush carpets, gilded furniture, walls adorned with portraits of himself. Yet, something felt different. The constant phone calls, the endless media appearances, the rallies, none of it had the same thrill it once had. The world had moved on. And, for the first time in his life, Trump was beginning to feel irrelevant. His team had been pitching him ideas for months. Book deals, interviews, media appearances, all the things that typically filled his calendar. But something was missing. A sense of purpose, maybe. And then, a conversation one afternoon set everything into motion. "Mr. Trump," said his advisor, Frank, walking into the room with a large folder in his hand. "I've been doing some research. There's something happening at Tesla, something big. They're working on a new energy project, something that could change everything." Frank paused, letting the words sink in. "Is that so?" Trump replied, his eyes narrowing as he considered the implications. Tesla, the tech giant led by Elon Musk, was a company that had always intrigued him. It was innovative, futuristic, and far removed from the traditional industries he was used to. But this energy project had the potential to disrupt everything. Trump, never one to shy away from disruption, leaned forward in his chair. "Tell me more," he said, his voice low with interest. Frank pulled a few documents from the folder and laid them on the desk. "There are rumors circulating that Tesla has developed a new satellite-based energy system. It could generate unlimited clean energy, something that could change the global balance of power. But there's also talk that the project is shrouded in secrecy. Not everyone at Tesla is on board with it, and it's raising serious ethical questions." Trump stroked his chin thoughtfully. "A satellite-based energy system, huh? Clean energy, unlimited? Sounds like something that could make me a lot of money, Frank. But why the secrecy?" Frank hesitated. "That's the issue. The details are vague, but there are whispers about Tesla's CEO, Elon Musk, being at the heart of it. Some people think he's trying to control the entire energy market. Others think the technology might be dangerous in the wrong hands." "Perfect," Trump said with a grin, suddenly standing up. "This could be my big comeback. If there's one thing I've always been good at, it's getting to the heart of a story. And if there's a story here, I want to know it. I'll go undercover." Frank blinked. "Undercover? You want to work at Tesla?" "Exactly," Trump replied, his confidence returning. "They won't see me coming. I'll infiltrate, find out what's really going on, and bring the truth to light. It'll be huge, bigger than anything they've ever seen. Trust me, Frank. This will work." Frank stood there, stunned. As Trump walked toward the window, his back turned. The skyline stretched out before him, and for a moment, he looked almost pensive. "Mr. Trump," Frank began, his voice hesitant, "are you sure about this? Going undercover at Tesla? It's a long shot. The last time you did something like this was, well, never." Trump turned around, his face full of that signature smirk. "It's exactly what I need. And besides, when has anyone ever doubted me? I'll show them how it's done. Now, get to work. We've got a cover story to craft." The next few days were a whirlwind. Trump didn't spend much time considering the risks. That was never his style. He was the master of reinvention, the king of the comeback. From his humble beginnings in Queens to his meteoric rise in the world of real estate, Trump had always been the kind of man who thrived in chaos. Politics had been just another stage for him to perform on. But now, it was the business world that called to him once again, in a completely different way. He had always prided himself on being a man who understood power, how to wield it, how to manipulate it. And this time, the power was in the hands of Tesla. Musk had created something groundbreaking, and Trump knew that if he could uncover what was truly happening behind closed doors, it could change everything. The stakes were high. A secret project with the potential to reshape the global economy? That was the kind of opportunity that didn't come around often. And for Trump, the chance to once again control the narrative was irresistible. Trump's decision to go undercover was met with skepticism from nearly everyone around him. His aides, his family, even his closest confidants couldn't quite wrap their heads around it. Why would the man who had once commanded the Oval Office, the man who had built a multi-billion-dollar empire, want to disguise himself as a lowly corporate strategist? But Trump wasn't deterred. The more they doubted, the more he dug his heels in. "Trust me," he told them. "I've got this. I'm going to do what no one else could. I'll get inside Tesla, find out what they're really working on, and come back with the truth. It's going to be Yuga." As he said the word, a part of him almost believed it. This could be his greatest stunt yet, one that would put him back in the spotlight for good. But as Trump took the first steps toward his undercover mission, you have to ask yourself, what would make someone like him, with so much at stake, risk it all to go undercover at a company like Tesla? Do you think it's a bold move or a colossal mistake? Let me know what you think in the comments. Trump had always been a man of action. His name alone had carried a weight that few could match. But now, with everything to lose, he was about to enter a world where nobody cared who he was. The stakes were higher than ever, and this time, there would be no room for mistakes. If he was going to pull this off, he needed more than just his usual bravado. He needed a plan. Trump sat back at his desk in Trump Tower, surrounded by a team of his most trusted advisors. They had gathered to discuss the next steps. The plan wasn't just to infiltrate Tesla. It was to become a part of the company, to blend in, and to gather as much information as possible without raising suspicion. No one could know who he really was, and every move had to be calculated. "All right, Frank," Trump said, looking at his advisor. "We're going to need a cover story. I can't just waltz in there and expect them to buy that I'm suddenly Donald Thompson, a corporate strategist. I need to be someone they would trust, someone who fits the culture of Tesla." Frank nodded. "We've been working on that. You'll need to be a tech guy, someone who's just a little too smart for his own good. Not too flashy, not too quiet. Someone who blends in but stands out enough to make a mark." Trump rubbed his chin. "I've always been good at making people notice me, Frank. Maybe I'll just be my usual self, but with a little less gold and a little more team player." "Exactly," Frank said. "We'll have a whole backstory ready. Donald Thompson, former business strategist at a tech startup, with a focus on energy innovation. We've even created fake LinkedIn profiles for you and fabricated some references. You'll slip in smoothly." Trump grinned, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Perfect. I don't need much to convince them. I'll handle the rest." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Trump spent hours with Frank, running through his new persona, rehearsing his background, and memorizing details that would make his cover story airtight. He wasn't just playing a role. He was becoming someone else entirely. And in many ways, that was the hardest part. For years, Trump had lived in the public eye, his every move scrutinized, his every word broadcasted. People knew him as the real estate mogul, the TV star, the politician. But none of that would matter once he set foot in Tesla. To succeed, he had to strip away everything that defined him and start fresh. It wasn't just about fitting into Tesla's culture, it was about understanding it. Tesla wasn't like any company Trump had dealt with before. It was cutting-edge, high-tech, and full of young, idealistic engineers who valued sustainability and innovation above all else. Their values were in stark contrast to Trump's old-school, profit-driven mentality. If he was going to pull this off, he needed to understand their world from the inside. On the morning of his first day at Tesla, Trump felt a strange sense of excitement. He had faced bigger challenges before, but this was different. This was personal. This was about proving that he could still control a narrative, still be the one to uncover the truth when others couldn't. But as the day approached, doubts began to creep in. His team had told him that getting a position at Tesla wouldn't be easy. The company was notoriously selective. But Trump didn't see obstacles. He saw opportunities. A few phone calls, a little manipulation, and soon enough, he had an offer in hand. The position wasn't glamorous, just a junior role in the energy innovation department, but it was enough to get him in the door. "Think about it, Frank," Trump had said as he signed the paperwork. "A man of my skills, my connections, in a company like Tesla, they'll never know what hit them." But Frank was less convinced. "You know this won't be easy, right? You're not going to waltz in and start calling the shots. They have their own way of doing things." "I don't need to call the shots," Trump had replied confidently. "I just need to figure out what's really going on. Once I know that, I can do anything." The night before his first day, Trump sat in his hotel room in Palo Alto, staring at himself in the mirror. He wasn't used to being someone else, but he had come this far, and he wasn't about to back down now. What do you think? Can Trump pull this off? Will he be able to maintain his cover and infiltrate Tesla's inner circle, or will his larger-than-life ego be his downfall? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The next morning, Trump put on his best, normal guy persona. A simple shirt, slacks, and a blazer. No gold, no flashy ties. He wasn't the Donald today. He was just Donald Thompson. He knew the moment he walked into Tesla's headquarters, he would be under a microscope. Every word, every action had to be calculated. But Trump wasn't afraid of a challenge. He'd been underestimated his entire life, and this time would be no different. As he walked into the sleek, glass and steel building of Tesla's headquarters in Silicon Valley, Trump felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. This was a world he had never been a part of, fast-paced, innovative, and full of young minds eager to change the world. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew one thing. He was going to figure out Tesla's biggest secret, and he was going to make sure the world knew about it. The game had begun. Tesla. The name alone carried a weight in Silicon Valley. It was more than just a company. It was a revolution in motion. Yet, as Trump stepped through the front doors, he couldn't help but wonder. Was he out of his depth in this high-tech utopia? Could a man who had spent his life in the world of skyscrapers and boardrooms truly fit in with a company built on cutting-edge innovation? The next few days would prove whether his bold plan was genius or madness. Trump had arrived at Tesla's headquarters in Palo Alto with the confidence that only a man who had been at the top could possess. Yet, as he walked through the glass doors, a sense of unfamiliarity crept over him. The building was sleek, minimalistic, with open spaces filled with tech-savvy employees who looked more like hackers than corporate drones. The whole vibe was different, energized, even a little chaotic. He wasn't in Trump Tower anymore. He was surrounded by people who thrived on making things that were supposed to be impossible, possible. For a brief moment, he wondered if he had made the right decision. "Mr. Thompson, right?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. Trump turned to see a young woman standing beside him. She had short, platinum blonde hair and a crisp, modern look, her eyes scanning him with curiosity. She was wearing a plain black Tesla t-shirt, paired with jeans, a far cry from the tailored suits he was used to. "Yes, that's me," Trump replied, offering a handshake. "Donald Thompson." She shook his hand firmly. "I'm Jenny. I'll be your guide for the day. I'll show you around, get you set up. Follow me, please." Trump followed her down the sleek, open-concept hallways. The office space was buzzing with activity. Employees were sitting at communal desks, collaborating in small groups, or hunched over their laptops. There was no visible hierarchy, no pomp and circumstance, just people working together in what seemed like a very different world than the one Trump had known. "Tesla runs on innovation," Jenny said, leading him through the workspace. "We believe in a flat structure here. No one's above anyone else. The best ideas come from anyone, anywhere." Trump was silent for a moment. He mused. "Sounds like a lot of chaos. How do you actually get anything done?" Jenny smiled. "It's all about being agile, being able to pivot quickly. We don't waste time on politics or waiting for approval. If you have a good idea, you make it happen." "Interesting," Trump muttered. He had always been the one who made things happen, but this was a new world. Still, he wasn't worried. No matter how different it seemed, he knew he could dominate any environment. After all, he had built a multi-billion-dollar empire on his ability to understand people and get what he wanted. Trump's world had always been structured around control. His businesses, his political career, his public persona. He was used to being the one in charge, the one people looked up to. But here, in the heart of Tesla, he was just another employee. One of many, trying to prove himself in a world where ideas and innovation mattered more than prestige. It was a humbling experience, something Trump hadn't fully expected. Sure, he had faced obstacles before, but the landscape here was so different from his own. The energy was electric, not because of money, but because of ambition to change the world. Yet, there was something about the idealism of Tesla that Trump couldn't quite embrace. He wasn't in it to save the planet. He was here for something much more personal. His curiosity was piqued by the rumors surrounding the secret energy project, and if he could uncover what Tesla was hiding, it would be the comeback of a lifetime. But to do that, he had to be patient. He couldn't just barge in and demand answers. In a place like Tesla, it was all about earning trust first. Jenny led him into a small conference room where a handful of people were already gathered around a table. The team was young, early 20s to mid-30s, all dressed casually in jeans and t-shirts, typing furiously on laptops or talking in low voices. There was an air of seriousness in the room, but no one seemed intimidated by the presence of a newcomer. In fact, no one even paid him much attention. "All right, everyone," Jenny said. "This is Donald Thompson. He's joining us for a few projects in the energy innovation team. Please make him feel welcome." Trump nodded curtly and sat down at the empty spot by the table. He wasn't used to being the one who had to fit in, but he reminded himself that this wasn't about comfort, it was about uncovering the truth. As the meeting began, Trump listened closely. They were discussing the latest advancements in Tesla's solar power technology, something he had read about before but never fully understood. They talked about power grids, satellite-based energy collection, and the future of energy storage. But what really caught his attention was a passing mention of Project X. Once the satellite system is fully operational, one engineer said, his voice excited, "We'll be able to generate energy anywhere. We'll change everything. The world will be ours." Project X? Trump thought to himself. He had heard rumors of such a project, but hearing it mentioned so casually sent a thrill down his spine. This was the kind of breakthrough he had been looking for. He leaned forward, trying to mask his excitement with a calm demeanor. "What exactly is Project X?" he asked, his voice steady but curious. The room fell silent for a moment, and all eyes turned to him. Jenny shot him an uncomfortable look, but quickly recovered. That's a very sensitive topic, Donald. We can't really get into details right now." Trump could feel the tension in the room. They were hiding something, but he wasn't going to push. Not yet. As the meeting continued, Trump's mind was racing. Project X, it was exactly what he had been hoping for, the breakthrough he needed to turn everything around. But the more he heard about it, the more he realized how much he didn't know. And that was frustrating. He had never been in a situation where he didn't have control, where he couldn't just make a few calls and get answers. This was going to be harder than he thought. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Trump was given small tasks, nothing too important, and he spent the majority of his time observing the team dynamics. He noted how everyone seemed to work in sync. There was no hierarchy, no boss telling people what to do. It was a culture of collaboration, one that Trump was used to in theory but had never fully embraced himself. He spent his lunch break alone, sitting outside in the company's solar-powered garden, reflecting on his situation. He wasn't in charge here, but that didn't mean he couldn't get what he needed. All he had to do was play his cards right. Day 2 at Tesla, and Trump had already made one thing clear. He wasn't here to be a passive observer. The excitement from yesterday's discovery of Project X still buzzed in his mind. But as he stood at the edge of the solar-powered garden, watching the young engineers rush by, he knew one thing for sure. Tesla was a machine, and he needed to learn how it worked before he could pull any strings. Today, the real game began. Trump stood outside the Tesla headquarters, watching his employees hurry to and fro, their faces focused, their energy palpable. There was a sense of urgency here that he had never experienced in his own businesses. Back in his world, the power came from the top, boardrooms, skyscrapers, power lunches. But here, it was all about ideas. Innovation wasn't something you waited for. It was something you chased relentlessly. And right now, Trump felt like he was chasing it. "Okay, Donald, time to play the game," he muttered to himself, adjusting his jacket and walking back inside. Despite all his wealth, fame, and political experience, Trump had never felt like this before. He was accustomed to being the person people followed. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a brand, an icon. His entire life had been a carefully curated display of power and control. But now, walking into Tesla's open-plan offices, surrounded by young, idealistic engineers, it hit him. In this world, his name meant nothing. No one knew who he really was. No one cared. Here, in the world of electric cars, satellites, and solar panels, his wealth was irrelevant. What mattered was innovation. What mattered was ideas. And if he was going to succeed, he needed to shift his mindset, and fast. He had to become someone else, a part of the machine, an employee who was worthy of trust. That meant keeping his ego in check, pretending to be a humble newcomer, learning their ways without drawing attention to himself. Trump had always been the one to set the tone in a room. Now, he would have to do the opposite: observe, learn, and listen. The day's tasks were mundane: organizing files, sitting in on conference calls, assisting with basic research. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would put him in the spotlight. But Trump knew that was part of the plan. He couldn't force his way into anything too quickly. He had to be strategic. The engineers around him, mostly young men and women in their 20s and 30s, seemed like they were in a world of their own. Some were deeply involved in coding, others in designing energy systems. The office atmosphere was collaborative, but there was a clear sense that everyone had their own personal mission to complete. They didn't have time for distractions or for outsiders. Trump's goal was simple: get close to the people who mattered, especially the ones involved with Project X. And to do that, he needed to find a way to earn their trust without giving himself away. During lunch, Trump sat with a few of his new colleagues in the cafeteria, listening to their conversations. It didn't take long for him to notice the general vibe of the company. Tesla employees were not like the corporate drones he was used to. They weren't obsessed with profit margins or quarterly reports. Instead, they talked about the future, about the planet, and about how they were changing the world. One conversation caught his attention. A group of engineers were talking about the latest progress on the satellite energy project. "We're closer than ever," one engineer, a tall man with glasses, said. "We've got most of the pieces in place. It's just a matter of refining the energy collection system. Once we get the satellites launched and operational, we'll have a steady flow of clean, renewable energy. The possibilities are endless." Trump's ears perked up. This was the first real confirmation of what Project X entailed: satellite-based energy. The idea was brilliant. If it worked, it would be a game-changer. But there were still too many questions. How would the energy be distributed? Who controlled the flow? And more importantly, who would profit from it? He leaned in casually, hoping to insert himself into the conversation without appearing too eager. "Sounds like a pretty ambitious project. How long before it's fully operational?" The engineers paused and exchanged glances. It was clear they weren't used to outsiders asking about Project X. But one of them, a woman with dark curly hair, smiled politely. "Well, we're working on it. It's still in development, but it's on track to revolutionize the energy industry." Revolutionize the energy industry? Trump chuckled lightly, adjusting his posture. "That's a bold statement. But I guess with Tesla, you're used to doing things that are, well, a little outside the box." The woman laughed. "Exactly. But that's what makes it so exciting. We're not just another energy company. We're changing the game." Trump smiled to himself. This was it, the breakthrough he had been waiting for. Project X was real, and Tesla was about to launch a new era in energy. But there was something off about the way they spoke about it. Too much optimism, too much secrecy. "Tell me," Trump said, keeping his tone light and curious, "how do you all keep everything so under wraps? I mean, this sounds like the kind of thing that could change the world. You'd think there'd be more buzz about it." The engineers exchanged knowing glances again. "Well, "We're still working out some of the kinks," one of them said. "It's not something we want to put out there until it's ready. There's a lot of interest, but we need to get everything right first." Trump could tell they were withholding more than they were saying. There was a lot more to Project X than they were willing to share, and Trump knew that if he was going to figure it out, he would have to dig deeper. As the day wore on, Trump's mind raced with possibilities. Project X could make him a fortune, but more importantly, it could restore his reputation. This was the kind of innovation that could not only change the world, but also shift the global balance of power. Tesla was sitting on something big, something world-changing, and Trump knew he had to be the one to uncover it. But as he watched the employees around him working with such intense focus, he realized one thing. He wasn't going to get the answers he needed by acting like a showman. If he was going to infiltrate Tesla and uncover the secrets of Project X, he needed to be patient. He needed to play the long game. Tesla was more than just a company. It was a culture. And culture, as Trump was learning, was something you had to earn your way into. He could feel the energy of the place, but he also sensed something else, a wall. A wall built on trust, camaraderie, and shared vision. The only problem? Trump had always been a lone wolf. To get what he needed, he would have to start playing the game by their rules. Trump had spent the last few days blending in, watching, learning, and gathering intel. But today, something was different. It was his chance to make a move, to start building connections that could give him access to the inner circle of Tesla's most secretive projects. He learned a lot so far. Tesla wasn't just about flashy electric cars and solar panels. It was about people. People who were driven by a cause larger than money. They were obsessed with creating change. And while Trump admired their ambition, he also saw an opportunity. If he could get on the radar of the right people, he could unlock everything. Project X was the key, and he needed to figure out who held the lock. Trump was no stranger to power games. He had spent his entire life navigating the intricate dance of business deals, media appearances, and political power plays. But Tesla was different. This wasn't a world where the loudest voice won. This was a place where ideas mattered more than influence, where collaboration was more important than control. It was a place where everyone thought they were a part of something bigger, something revolutionary. And for Trump, that was a double-edged sword. On one hand, he could exploit the culture to his advantage. On the other, it was going to be a challenge to stay in the shadows long enough to find what he needed without tipping anyone off to his true intentions. The morning began like any other. Trump was tasked with organizing reports and sitting in on brainstorming sessions with the energy innovation team. But there was something different about today. Jenny, the woman who had shown him around on his first day, had invited him to lunch. "Hey, Donald," she had said, looking a little more relaxed than usual. "Why don't you join me and the team for lunch today? We're heading over to the new cafe down the street. It's a good spot for ideas, if you're interested." Trump saw an opportunity. He had been trying to get closer to Jenny and her colleagues for a while now, and this was his chance to break into their inner circle. He could feel his gut telling him this was important. The more time he spent around people like Jenny, the more he could learn about Project X, and perhaps more importantly, about the company's leadership and how they operated. "Sure, sounds great," Trump replied with a smile. "I'd love to get to know everyone better." As they made their way to the cafe, Trump casually asked Jenny about her background. She responded with a quick but enthusiastic explanation of how she had joined Tesla after graduating from MIT, eager to work in a company that was changing the world. "I came from a family of engineers," Jenny said, her eyes lighting up as she spoke. "But when I saw what Tesla was doing, I knew I had to be part of it. We're not just making cars. We're revolutionizing energy, creating sustainable systems. It's about leaving a legacy." Trump nodded, feigning interest. But inside, his mind was racing. Legacy. That was what everyone seemed to care about here. They weren't just chasing money, they were chasing something bigger. And that made them more dangerous. As they sat down at the cafe, the conversation naturally turned to work. Jenny's colleagues were lively and animated, talking about everything from the latest solar innovations to the potential of AI and energy systems. Trump found himself listening more than speaking, letting them lead the conversation while he quietly observed. This was how he would play it. They wouldn't suspect a thing. Then, one of the engineers, a man named Kyle, dropped a bombshell. I heard Project X is finally going to take off next year, Kyle said, lowering his voice, though not enough to be discreet. If we can pull it off, we'll have unlimited energy. Literally. All we need is a few more breakthroughs, and we'll be set. Trump's ears perked up. He had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed made his pulse race. Unlimited energy. This was bigger than he had imagined. This was the future, and Tesla was sitting on it. But there was something unsettling in Kyle's tone, like he wasn't entirely convinced it would work. Jenny quickly tried to steer the conversation away. We're still in the testing phase, Kyle, she said, her tone a little too sharp. Nothing is set in stone yet. Trump seized the moment. Sounds like you've got a lot of faith in this project. What makes you so sure it's going to change the world? Kyle looked at him, a little surprised by the question. Because we're doing something no one else has ever tried. We're tapping into space itself, literally collecting energy from satellites orbiting the Earth. If we can perfect the system, we'll have a constant flow of renewable energy from anywhere in the world. We're talking about a global network of power. Trump leaned forward, his mind racing. This was it, the thing he had been chasing. Satellite energy. But why was Jenny so quick to shut down the conversation? What were they hiding? As the conversation wound down, Trump couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. There were too many questions left unanswered. If Project X was so revolutionary, why was there so much secrecy around it? And why was Jenny so protective of it? Trump realized he needed to shift his approach. He couldn't just sit back and wait for people to hand him the answers. If he wanted to know the truth, he would need to get closer to the people who knew the most. And that meant making allies, finding the right person to trust. Jenny had given him a small piece of the puzzle, but he needed more. He would need to dig deeper, and that meant playing the game. He couldn't afford to be the outsider anymore. It was time to blend in completely. Trump had spent his entire career navigating complex relationships, but nothing had prepared him for the web of trust he was now trying to untangle at Tesla. The closer he got to the core of Project X, the more he realized one thing. Everyone had their own agenda, and in a place like Tesla, no one was as they seemed. It had been 2 weeks since Trump had first started blending in at Tesla, and the layers were starting to peel away. He had learned a lot, but with each new revelation, more questions seemed to emerge. Project X, the satellite energy project, was a tantalizing prize. But the more he tried to get close to it, the more he realized it was locked up tighter than any vault in his own skyscrapers. It wasn't just about technology or money anymore. The stakes had changed. There was a power struggle brewing behind the scenes, and Trump was starting to see glimpses of it. The trust he had been so carefully cultivating with employees like Jenny and Kyle was starting to feel fragile. Every conversation now felt like a delicate dance. Who could he trust? Who was using him? The longer he stayed undercover, the more he realized that the people around him weren't as transparent as they appeared. Trump was no stranger to maneuvering in environments where trust was in short supply. In the high-stakes world of real estate and politics, trust was often an illusion. A commodity you could build and break at will. But at Tesla, it felt different. Everyone here was part of something bigger than themselves, a collective dream of reshaping the world's energy systems. They weren't just after money. They were after legacy. And that, Trump realized, was a whole new kind of power. It was that same power that Trump wanted to control. But how could he if he couldn't even figure out who was on his side? The game had changed, and it was time for Trump to adapt. Trump had made headway with Jenny, but there was still a wall between them. She was friendly, even warm, but there was something guarded in her eyes whenever the topic of Project X came up. She never gave him a direct answer, never shared any details that would help him connect the dots. Instead, she subtly deflected. And it wasn't just her. Kyle, too, seemed like he was keeping something back. He had mentioned Project X casually, as if it were just another project. But when Trump pressed him for more details, Kyle got evasive. It was clear that Tesla's most promising project had a level of secrecy that went beyond normal corporate confidentiality. There was something deeper at play here, and Trump needed to uncover it. One afternoon, after another uneventful day of tasks and meetings, Trump found himself sitting alone in one of Tesla's quieter break rooms. He was reviewing notes from the last few weeks, trying to piece together any hint of a pattern. It was then that he noticed something odd. A few weeks ago, He had seen a name, Victor Hartley, come up repeatedly in various reports. Victor was a senior executive at Tesla, someone with real power, but he was never in the meetings Trump attended. He had a reputation for being elusive, and more importantly, he seemed to be involved in Project X. Yet, Trump had never crossed paths with him. It didn't take long for Trump's instincts to kick in. If Project X was as big as he suspected, Victor Hartley was likely one of the key players pulling the strings behind the scenes. The next day, Trump made it a point to get closer to the people who worked with Victor Hartley. He asked around, subtly probing for information. He learned that Victor had a small circle of trusted employees, those who handled the highest-level secrets at Tesla. If Trump could get into that circle, he would have access to the heart of Project X. His first move was to reach out to Alex, one of the engineers who worked directly under Victor. Alex had been in a few of Trump's meetings and had seemed approachable. They had exchanged pleasantries in the past, but nothing substantial. Trump decided to change that. "Hey, Alex," Trump said, finding him in the hallway near the lab. "Got a minute?" Alex looked up, clearly surprised. Sure, Donald. What's up?" Trump leaned in slightly, lowering his voice to make the conversation feel more confidential. "I've been thinking about the work you're doing with Victor Hartley. I've been pretty impressed by everything I've seen here at Tesla, and I think I could really contribute to your team. I'm not looking to step on anyone's toes, just thought I'd offer whatever help I can." Alex raised an eyebrow. It wasn't a bad pitch, but it was too soon. Trump could feel the hesitation in his posture. "I'll be honest, it's not that simple," Alex replied cautiously. "Victor runs a tight ship. If you want to get involved with his projects, it's not just about showing interest. You've got to prove you can keep up." Trump nodded, sensing the challenge, but also sensing an opportunity. "I get it. I'm not looking to take over, just maybe see where I can pitch in. If you think there's a way I could add value, I'm all ears." Alex thought for a moment before speaking again. "All right, well, let's see how it goes. I'll mention it to Victor, but don't get your hopes up. He doesn't just hand out trust." The next few days were a game of waiting. Trump knew that getting into Victor's inner circle wouldn't happen overnight, but now he had his foot in the door. He just needed to be patient and wait for an opening. It was around this time that Jenny, whom Trump had been trying to build rapport with, pulled him aside one afternoon. She looked more serious than usual, a slight frown tugging at the corners of her lips. "Can I talk to you for a second?" she asked, guiding him into a quiet corner of the office. "I've been hearing rumors. People are getting a little suspicious of you." Trump's heart skipped a beat. He had known it would happen sooner or later. Too many questions, too many observations. "What kind of rumors?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Jenny hesitated. "People are saying you're asking too many questions about Project X. It's not just that you're curious. They're starting to think you have an agenda." Trump's mind raced. This was exactly what he feared. If Tesla started to suspect him, he wouldn't get close to anything. He had to act fast. "I'm just trying to understand what Tesla is doing here," Trump said, keeping his tone casual. "Nothing more, nothing less. I'm new, and I'm just trying to contribute where I can." Jenny studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Just be careful. People around here don't take kindly to outsiders poking around. If you want to stay under the radar, you need to be more discreet." The tension is rising, and Trump is caught between the need to get closer to Tesla's secrets and the growing suspicion from those around him. Can he earn the trust of the right people before he gets caught? Or will his own actions expose his true motives? What do you think Trump should do next? Should he keep pushing forward or back off for a while? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes, the hardest part of a covert operation isn't finding the information you need. It's knowing who you can trust. And in a place like Tesla, where everyone is watching everyone else, trust was a luxury Trump couldn't afford. The question was no longer what he could uncover. It was who might betray him first. Trump's game had shifted into high gear. He had spent weeks carefully crafting relationships, sowing seeds of trust, and gathering as much information as he could about Project X. But now, the stakes were different. Tesla wasn't just a company. It was a fortress, and the more he dug, the more he realized it was surrounded by walls of loyalty, secrecy, and suspicion. Everyone at Tesla had something to protect, and everyone seemed to be guarding their own personal treasure trove of knowledge. And in this environment, trust was the one commodity that could either propel him to victory or bury him. Trump knew he couldn't just rely on charm and cunning anymore. He had to outsmart the people around him, especially now that some of them were starting to get suspicious. Trump had always been a master of keeping people at arm's length, even when he needed them. In real estate and politics, he learned quickly that emotions had no place in business. People were tools. Use them and discard them when necessary. But Tesla was different. It wasn't about making deals over lunch or striking a handshake that closed the deal. This was a place where people lived and breathed the company's vision. Their loyalty wasn't just to the bottom line. It was to the future, to a cause greater than themselves. And Trump, for all his business acumen, didn't know how to play that game. Not yet, anyway. But he was learning. And as he learned, he realized the most dangerous people in Tesla weren't the engineers or the designers. They were the ones who had power over the information. If he could break into the vault of knowledge, he would have the keys to the kingdom. But who could he trust to let him in? It was around this time that Trump was invited to an after-hours meeting with some of the senior engineers working on Project X. Jenny had been hinting that there was a big reveal coming soon, and Trump's name had been mentioned as a potential contributor to the project. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Finally, he was making progress. He had been invited into the circle. But there was a catch. Jenny had cautioned him before the meeting. "Don't overplay your hand," she warned him. "You're still new here. A lot of these guys have been working on Project X for years. They won't take kindly to someone who's just looking for shortcuts." Trump nodded, trying to keep his excitement under control. He had always been good at playing it cool in high-stakes situations, and this was no different. But as he entered the meeting room, a feeling of unease settled in his gut. The faces around the table were familiar: Kyle, Alex, and several others. But there was one new face, a man sitting at the head of the table. He had a cold, calculating look to him, and his eyes seemed to pierce right through Trump. The man introduced himself as Richard Bauer, a senior executive who had recently been brought in to oversee the development of Project X on a more strategic level. Trump immediately knew Bauer was the real power in the room. He could feel it in the way everyone in the room deferred to him, in the subtle respect in their eyes. Bauer was the key to getting deeper into the project. If Trump could figure out how to work his way into Bauer's good graces, he would be set. But there was something about Bauer that Trump didn't trust. His presence was unnerving, and his questions were too probing, too deliberate. Bauer was studying him just as closely as Trump was studying him. The meeting was a blur of jargon and technical speak. Kyle and Alex presented the latest data on Project X, but Trump could barely focus on the details. His attention kept drifting back to Bauer. The more Trump tried to contribute, the more Bauer seemed to dismiss him with a nod or a short answer. It was clear that Bauer wasn't interested in Trump's insights, or his presence, for that matter. But then, just as Trump was about to give up on the meeting and write it off as another wasted opportunity, Bauer made a comment that caught him off guard. "You know, Donald," Bauer said with a sly smile, "I've been hearing some interesting things about you. People say you've got a knack for turning projects around. You've been with Tesla for how long now? 3 weeks?" Trump didn't flinch. He knew Bauer was testing him. But how much did Bauer really know? "I've been here long enough to see the potential of Project X," Trump said, keeping his voice calm. "I think it's something truly revolutionary. But I'm also starting to see that there's more to it than just the technology. The people behind it, the leadership, that's where the real power lies." Bauer's smile widened slightly, but it wasn't warm. "Yes," he said, his voice lowering. "Power is important, but so is control. And control is something you have to earn. Just like trust." Trump swallowed hard. He knew that Bauer wasn't just talking about Project X, he was talking about Trump himself. Bauer had already sized him up, and Trump had no idea if he was about to become an ally or a target. After the meeting, Trump couldn't shake the feeling that Bauer was playing a game he hadn't quite figured out yet. As he left the room, he caught a quick glance from Jenny. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes betrayed a hint of concern. She had warned him about overstepping, but Trump was starting to think that Jenny was holding something back as well. Back in his temporary workspace, Trump tried to process everything. What was Bauer's angle? What did he mean by control? Was this just a warning? Or was Bauer trying to bait him into making a move? And why was Ginny acting so strange? That night, Trump couldn't sleep. His mind raced with possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. He realized that he had to act quickly before Bauer, or anyone else, decided to take control of the narrative. If he was going to get anywhere near Project X, he needed to make a bold move. And to do that, he needed to be one step ahead of everyone else at Tesla. Power doesn't just come from what you know, it comes from what you can control. And Trump knew that if he was going to make his move at Tesla, he needed something that everyone in the room wanted: leverage. But the problem with leverage is that it always comes with a price. The question was, who would Trump have to betray to pay that price? Trump knew the game had changed. After his unsettling encounter with Richard Bauer, the situation had gone from a chess match to a minefield. He was no longer just trying to get close to Project X. Now, it was about survival. Who could he trust, and more importantly, who was willing to betray him for their own gain? The walls around Project X were thickening, and Bauer had made it clear that the stakes were higher than Trump had anticipated. Control was everything, and it wasn't just about getting information. It was about positioning himself at the center of that control. But Trump had learned one thing from decades of high-stakes deals. The best way to gain control was to get leverage. And leverage, he knew, often meant cutting deals with people you'd rather not associate with. In Trump's world, every deal came with strings attached. He had made millions, then lost them, and made them again, by forging alliances with people who knew the value of loyalty, until it suited them to break it. As a businessman, he was familiar with the harsh truth. In every negotiation, someone would walk away worse off. The question was, could Trump play that game in Tesla's world? Could he outweed a company that didn't care about profit margins the same way he did, but instead was driven by a much bigger vision? Tesla wasn't just about business. It was about legacy. That's what made it dangerous. But Trump knew that if he could maneuver through the maze of power, trust, and betrayal, he could turn Tesla into the next great empire under his control. The first opportunity came sooner than expected. Trump had spent the next several days being more cautious around Ginny, Kyle, and Alex. He wasn't sure if they were still trustworthy, especially after his conversation with Bauer. Ginny had been especially cold since the meeting, and Trump couldn't help but wonder if she had betrayed his intentions. But just when he thought he'd hit a wall, Kyle came to him with an offer. "Hey, Donald," Kyle said one afternoon, catching Trump on his way out of a meeting. "I've been talking to a few of the guys, and, well, we think you might be able to help us out. There's been some talk that you're looking to get more involved with Project X. If you're serious, we could use someone with your experience." Kyle's tone was casual, but there was an edge to it, a quiet urgency that caught Trump's attention. "What exactly are you saying?" Trump asked, keeping his tone measured. Kyle leaned in, lowering his voice. "We've been running into some roadblocks with Bauer. He's been keeping us in the dark about a lot of things, and it's starting to slow us down. If you want to get to the heart of Project X, you'll have to get in his circle. But you've got to be careful. Bauer isn't a man who shares power easily." Trump considered the proposition for a moment. Kyle was offering him an opportunity to sidestep Bauer's stranglehold over the project. But what was the price? Trump had learned that no one gave anything away for free, especially not at Tesla. "What's your angle?" Trump asked, his gaze narrowing. "Why are you telling me this?" Kyle hesitated for a moment, then looked around to make sure no one else was listening. "Let's just say there's a few of us who don't exactly see eye to eye with Bauer. If you're willing to help us out, we could get you closer to Project X. But you'll need to work with us, not against us. We can't afford to have someone playing both sides." Trump paused. This was it, the offer he'd been waiting for. But there was a catch. He'd have to pick a side. Trump felt the weight of the decision hanging in the air. Kyle was right. There was no way to play both sides without being exposed. He couldn't back out now. Tesla's future, and his place in it, depended on what he did next. He needed leverage, and he needed it fast. But the more he thought about it, the more the pieces fell into place. Kyle's offer wasn't just about giving him access to Project X. It was about a larger game. If Trump helped Kyle's group push back against Bauer, he could align himself with the true power players at Tesla. He would have his foot firmly in the door of the project, and in control of a growing faction of employees who were disillusioned with Bauer's leadership. It was a risky move, but Trump was used to risk. And besides, what was the worst that could happen? If things went south, he could always make an exit. But for now, he had to seize the opportunity. All right, Trump said, after a long pause. I'll help you, but you need to get me something in return. Kyle raised an eyebrow, surprised by how quickly Trump had agreed. What do you need? Trump's eyes glinted with calculation. I want full access to Project X. If you want my help, you give me the information. Everything. No secrets. Kyle hesitated, then nodded. Deal. But you'll have to be careful. Bauer's watching everyone. You can't make a move without backup. Trump smiled. Finally, things were moving in his favor. But as he shook hands with Kyle, a nagging feeling crept into his mind. He had made a deal, but who was really the one controlling the game? Was he being played, or was this his chance to play the others? The following days were a blur of covert meetings, hushed conversations, and careful manipulation. Trump met with Kyle's group several times, always under the guise of discussing ideas for improving the project. But every interaction with Bauer left Trump more convinced that the man was more than just a roadblock. He was a danger. Bauer was everywhere, watching, listening, always present in the shadows. Trump couldn't afford to make any more missteps. And as he navigated this treacherous web of alliances and betrayal, he started to realize that the only way to win would be to outplay everyone. Jenny, Kyle, Bauer, everyone. But as Trump's influence grew within the company, so did his awareness of the stakes. Tesla wasn't just about power and information. It was about loyalty, and betrayal was always lurking just beneath the surface. Every decision has a cost, and the higher you climb, the more it costs to stay at the top. Trump thought he was gaining control at Tesla, but what he didn't realize was that his success would soon put him in the most dangerous position of all, on the edge of a cliff, with no safety net below. Trump had made his move. By aligning himself with Kyle and the other disillusioned employees, he had positioned himself at the center of the unrest brewing within Tesla. For the first time in weeks, he felt the power shifting in his favor. He wasn't just an outsider anymore. He was a key player in a game far more complex than he had originally imagined. But with power came consequences, and those consequences were starting to show their teeth. In the world Trump came from, power was never given freely. It was taken. He had spent decades building an empire by exploiting every weakness, every opportunity, and every person who could be used to his advantage. But Tesla wasn't just another company to conquer. It was a system, a culture built on trust and innovation. And now, Trump realized he had to be careful. If he pushed too hard, too fast, he could lose everything. Tesla wasn't like the businesses he was used to. There were too many players, too many variables. The loyalty these people had to the company wasn't something Trump could buy, at least not in the way he was accustomed to. He had to find another way, an angle that would let him gain the trust of the key players without tipping his hand. But who could he trust? And who was playing him? It was late one night when Trump received a message from Jenny. They had been keeping their distance for the past few days, but the tone of the message was urgent. Meet me in the parking garage. 10 p.m. Don't tell anyone. Trump's heart skipped a beat. Jenny had been distant since their last conversation, and her tone now seemed tinged with something he couldn't quite place. Fear? Anxiety? He knew better than to ignore such a summons. As he walked toward the parking garage that evening, his mind raced. Was this a trap? Was Bauer involved? Or was it just Jenny trying to make contact without anyone knowing? When he reached the garage, he saw her standing by the far corner, her hands nervously fidgeting in her pockets. She looked up when she saw him, a tense expression crossing her face. "Donald," she said, her voice low, "I need to warn you. Bauer knows what you're up to. He knows you're working with Kyle and the others." Trump froze, his mind immediately racing through all the scenarios. How could Bauer know? Had someone tipped him off? "I don't know how, but he does," Jenny continued. "And he's watching you. Carefully. If you don't make a move soon, he'll shut you down. He's already planning to pull you from the project." Trump's instincts kicked into gear. He couldn't afford to let Bauer take control again. He had been maneuvering for weeks, and now it was time to push harder. But how could he outmaneuver someone like Bauer? A man who was always one step ahead. I know you've been working behind the scenes, Jenny said quietly, her gaze shifting nervously around the empty garage. But you're not the only one with allies. Bauer has a way of making people disappear, and if you're not careful, you'll be next. Trump could see the fear in her eyes, but there was something else, something like guilt. Was she warning him out of kindness, or was she trying to pull him into a deeper game? Trump couldn't tell. Jenny's warning hit harder than he expected. It wasn't just about Project X anymore. It was about survival. For a brief moment, Trump felt the weight of the situation. Was he really in control, or was he just a pawn in someone else's game? Do you think I'm in over my head? Trump asked, his voice low, though he tried to keep the uncertainty from showing. Jenny didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced at him carefully, as though weighing his next move. You've been playing the game, she said, her tone serious. But this game isn't like the ones you're used to. This isn't just about power or money. It's about loyalty, about who you can trust. You can't buy trust here, Donald. Not with all the money in the world. Trump's mind raced. He knew exactly what Jenny was saying. He could leverage people. He could manipulate them, make them think he was their ally. But in the end, Tesla was different. These people weren't motivated by wealth or power alone. They were driven by something more, something he couldn't quite grasp. And that made them unpredictable. Jenny took a step closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Bauer's not your enemy. He's a player. The real enemy is someone you haven't seen yet. The words hit Trump like a hammer. Who? Jenny hesitated for a long moment, her eyes darting around the empty garage. There's someone even higher than Bauer. Someone who controls everything. Project X, Tesla, even Elon's vision. Someone who isn't afraid to get their hands dirty. Trump felt a chill run down his spine. Was she talking about someone in Elon Musk's inner circle? Or was this someone even more powerful than that? Before Trump could ask her more, Jenny turned quickly and walked toward the exit. I can't say more, she called back over her shoulder. But you need to be careful. Everything is not as it seems. And the price of power at Tesla is higher than you think. The next few days were a blur. Trump felt like he was walking a tightrope. One wrong move, and everything would come crashing down. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that Jenny's warning wasn't just about Bauer. It was about a deeper game, one that no one had prepared him for. Trump began digging into Tesla's corporate structure, talking to employees, reviewing documents, and trying to piece together the puzzle of who was truly in control. The more he learned, the more disturbing the truth became. There were shadows within shadows, powerful figures whose names never appeared in the press or in meetings. And those were the people Trump needed to outsmart. As he analyzed the situation, he realized that Kyle and the others were right. Bauer wasn't the real threat. He was just a pawn in a much larger game. The true mastermind behind Tesla's future and its power was someone far more dangerous, someone Trump could never have predicted. Powerful people rarely reveal themselves. They work in the shadows, manipulating from behind the scenes, where no one can see them. Trump had spent his career pulling the strings, but now he was being pulled by someone he couldn't yet identify. And as the walls around him started closing in, he realized that the true battle for Tesla's future wasn't going to be one with strategy or manipulation. It was going to be one with trust, and he had no idea who he could trust anymore. Trump had always been the one pulling the strings. His entire career was built on knowing exactly how to manipulate situations, how to read people, and how to find leverage when it seemed there was none. But Tesla was different. This time, it wasn't just about controlling the company. It was about surviving in a world where control was always slipping through his fingers. Jenny's cryptic warning echoed in his mind. There's someone higher than Bauer. Someone you haven't seen yet. He couldn't stop thinking about it. Who could this person be? And why had Jenny risked everything to give him this information? Trump had always been a man of action. When faced with a mystery, he solved it. But this wasn't just a simple puzzle. It was a game of high stakes, one that could cost him everything if he made a wrong move. Trump knew that in his world, people didn't hide their power for long. The truth always surfaced, whether you wanted it to or not. But at Tesla, things worked differently. The company's culture, its ambition, its mission, it all created a kind of loyalty, a fervent belief that they were part of something greater than themselves. and that made people unpredictable. In Trump's world, loyalty was something you could buy. In Tesla's world, it was something you had to earn. He had always relied on being able to manipulate people's desires. He understood ambition like the back of his hand. But here, people didn't just want wealth. They wanted to change the world. And that was something Trump didn't quite understand. Trump spent the next few days quietly digging. He met with Kyle and the others, trying to gauge their loyalty and discover if any of them had insights into who this mysterious higher power might be. Kyle was cautious, always skirting around the issue when it came up. Jenny, too, had gone silent, her warnings leaving Trump on edge, unsure of who he could trust. But then, just when things seemed to be at their most precarious, Trump received an unexpected invitation. It came in the form of a simple message. "Meet me at the Tesla headquarters, 2 a.m. Come alone." The message wasn't signed, but Trump felt a chill run down his spine. Who was this? Someone inside Tesla? Or was this a trap? He had no choice but to go. If this was his chance to finally uncover the mystery behind Tesla's true power structure, he had to take it. At precisely 2 a.m., Trump arrived at Tesla's headquarters. The building was eerily quiet, the lights dimmed, as if the world had gone to sleep. He approached the entrance cautiously, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. Inside, the hallways were empty, save for a single figure standing in the shadows at the far end of the corridor. Trump's heart skipped a beat as the person stepped into the dim light. It was Richard Bauer. Trump's instincts kicked in immediately. He knew that Bauer was a man who operated in secrecy, but this was different. Bauer didn't work alone. Trump had no idea what kind of game he was walking into, but he knew this meeting would be the turning point. "Donald," Bauer said, his voice low and controlled, "I'm glad you came. There's something you need to know. Something you haven't figured out yet." Trump's mind raced. Was Bauer trying to trap him? Or was this an opportunity to strike a deal? "I don't have time for games, Bauer," Trump said, his voice sharp. "What's going on? Who's really running things at Tesla?" Bauer didn't immediately answer. Instead, he took a step forward, his gaze piercing. "You've been playing with the wrong people, Donald. You think you can control Project X, but it's not that simple. There's someone else, someone more powerful than you realize, who's been controlling everything from the start. Someone who's been watching you." Trump's pulse quickened. Could it be? Was Bauer going to reveal the mysterious figure Jenny had warned him about? "You think you're in the game, but you're just a pawn," Bauer continued. "You've been chasing shadows, but the real power has always been behind the curtain. The person you're looking for is closer than you think. And if you don't wake up to that fact, you'll be crushed under their heel, just like everyone else who's tried to stand in their way." Trump took a deep breath. This wasn't just a threat, it was a warning. And Bauer was right. He had been so focused on getting control over Tesla, he hadn't even considered the possibility that someone was orchestrating the whole thing from behind the scenes. "You're telling me someone else is in charge?" Trump asked, his voice tight with disbelief. "Who?" Bauer smiled, a cold, almost pitying smile. "I can't tell you. Not yet. But you'll know soon enough. Just remember this. There's always someone bigger. And right now, that someone has his eye on you." As Bauer walked away into the darkness of the building, Trump was left standing in the silence, his mind racing. He had always been the one pulling the strings, the one who held the cards. But now, for the first time, he felt like a pawn in someone else's game. The pieces were falling into place, but they were scattered, unpredictable. The higher-ups at Tesla weren't just trying to protect Project X. They were trying to protect something far bigger, something that Trump didn't yet understand. And if he didn't figure it out soon, he could lose everything. Sometimes, the most dangerous enemies are the ones you can't see. They move in the shadows, pulling the strings, controlling the game. Trump thought he was playing the role of master strategist at Tesla, but now he was starting to realize the chilling truth. Someone else was controlling him all along. And with every step he took, they were tightening their grip. The meeting with Bauer had left Trump more unsettled than he cared to admit. The idea that someone was pulling the strings behind the scenes, someone even more powerful than Bauer, gnawed at him. He had always considered himself the ultimate power broker, but Tesla was a different animal. It wasn't just about money or influence here. It was about innovation, vision, and loyalty to something far greater than individual gain. For the first time, Trump didn't feel in control. The next morning, Trump sat in his office at Tesla's headquarters, his mind spinning. Jenny's warnings echoed in his head, and Bauer's cryptic remarks only deepened the mystery. There was no clear path forward. Every move he made seemed to lead him deeper into a labyrinth, with no clear exit. He needed answers, and fast. Trump had always been a man of action. Whether in real estate, television, or politics, his formula had been the same: dominate, leverage, and manipulate. The idea of being outsmarted was alien to him. But Tesla wasn't a typical company. Its employees weren't motivated by money alone. They had a shared vision, a belief in the future that transcended individual egos. And that made them a different breed of players. Trump couldn't buy them, manipulate them, or bend them to his will the way he was used to. He had to understand their motivations, their loyalty, and what drove them to take such risks for a cause greater than profit. And that, he realized, was something he could never have anticipated, because it wasn't about what they wanted. It was about who they believed in. Trump's search for answers led him down an unexpected path. The name that had been whispered in the shadows, the name he had overheard in hushed conversations and seen scribbled on obscure documents, kept surfacing again and again: Maxwell Crane. At first, Trump thought it was just another rumor, a figment of some disgruntled employee's imagination. But the more he dug, the more he realized this name was central to everything. Maxwell Crane wasn't just some high-ranking executive or hidden benefactor. No, Maxwell Crane was something far more significant. He was the mastermind, the true puppet master behind Tesla. The revelation hit Trump like a ton of bricks. He had been playing in a world of illusion, where he believed he was making the decisions, when in reality, Maxwell Crane had been shaping the course of Tesla from the very beginning. But who was Maxwell Crane? And why had he chosen to remain in the shadows all this time? To find out, Trump did what he did best. He went directly to the source. It wasn't easy to get an audience with Maxwell. The man was a ghost, someone who never appeared in public, never gave interviews, and never made any decisions that were officially recorded. But Trump had his ways. He made a few calls, pushed a few buttons, and before long, he was being granted a private meeting with the elusive Crane. The meeting was set for 10 p.m. in a remote office deep within Tesla's sprawling headquarters. Trump arrived, his mind racing with a mixture of curiosity and caution. As he entered the room, he was greeted by a tall figure standing by the window. Maxwell Crane was dressed in a sharp suit, his back to the door, staring out over the city skyline. He looked like a man who had already seen the future and was simply waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. "Mr. Trump," Crane said, his voice calm but commanding, "I've been expecting you." Trump's stomach tightened. He had no idea how long Crane had known he was coming, or how much he had already discovered. But he wasn't going to show weakness. "Cut the games, Crane," Trump said, his voice sharp. "I know you're the one pulling the strings at Tesla. I know you've been running things from behind the scenes, controlling every move. I want to know why." Crane turned to face him slowly, his expression unreadable. "You think you know everything, don't you? You think that because you've built an empire, you can just waltz into any situation and take control. But you've underestimated Tesla, Donald. And you've underestimated me." Trump didn't flinch. "So what's your game then? Why stay in the shadows? Why all the secrecy?" Crane smiled, a thin, knowing smile. "Because, Mr. Trump, I don't need to be in the spotlight. I don't need the fame or the recognition. I'm not like you. I don't do things for the glory or the money. I do them because they need to be done. Tesla isn't just a company. It's a vision, a mission. And I'm the one who's been guiding it from the beginning." Trump's mind reeled. He had always believed that vision was just a byproduct of a company's success. But Crane seemed to believe that vision was the driving force behind everything. "So, what is it you want? What's your endgame?" Crane's smile faded slightly. "My endgame, Mr. Trump, is the same as yours: control. But I'm playing a much longer game than you. You've been focused on your immediate gains, trying to get a piece of the Tesla pie. But that's not what's important. What's important is shaping the future. And that's what I've been doing all along." Trump felt a chill run down his spine. Crane wasn't just playing for power. He was playing for something far more dangerous: control over the future itself. The realization that Maxwell Crane wasn't just interested in corporate dominance. He was trying to reshape the entire future of energy, technology, and society hit Trump hard. Tesla was no longer just a company. It was a movement. And the more Trump learned about Crane's hidden plans, the more he realized that he was only a small piece in a much larger puzzle. "I've been patient," Crane continued, "but your actions have put things at risk. I didn't bring you here to get in your way, Donald. I brought you here because I need you to understand something. You're either with me or you're against me. And if you choose the latter, you'll regret it." Trump took a step back. His mind raced, but his face remained stoic. Was Crane threatening him? Or was he offering an opportunity? "I'm not interested in being anyone's pawn, Crane," Trump said firmly, "but I'll do whatever it takes to win. I always do." Crane regarded him for a long moment before nodding slowly. "I know. That's why I wanted you here. Every man has a breaking point. For some, it's losing everything they've built. For others, it's realizing they were never in control to begin with." Trump had always thought of himself as the one who called the shots, but now, standing face to face with Maxwell Crane, he was forced to confront a terrifying truth. He was at a crossroads, and the decision he made next could determine not just his future, but the future of the world itself. The meeting with Maxwell Crane had left Trump more conflicted than he could ever recall being in his life. He was used to power. He'd wielded it, manipulated it, and reshaped it to fit his desires. But this was different. Maxwell Crane wasn't just playing for money or fame. He was playing for the future. He was reshaping the world, one move at a time. And Trump realized, for the first time in his career, that he was not the biggest player at the table. The silence in the room between them was palpable. Crane's words hung in the air, each one like a challenge Trump couldn't ignore. "You're either with me or against me," Crane had said, his calm demeanor not hiding the dangerous edge to his voice. "If you choose the latter, you'll regret it." Trump had heard threats before, but this was different. Crane's cold, calculated tone wasn't a bluff. It was a promise. But Trump wasn't used to being threatened. He wasn't used to losing. Trump's life had been defined by his ability to navigate through uncertainty. In real estate, in television, and politics, he'd always been the one who came out on top, no matter how steep the odds seemed. He was a survivor, a dealmaker, a force of nature. But Tesla was a different kind of beast. It wasn't just a company. It was a movement, a mission, and, as Crane had so chillingly put it, a vision. Trump realized that if he wanted to play in this world, he had to shift his approach. No longer could he rely on brute force or manipulation. To survive, he would have to outsmart Crane at his own game. The more Trump thought about it, the more his options seemed to close in on him. He could try to fight Crane, to wrest control from him and take over Tesla for himself, but that path seemed fraught with peril. Crane wasn't just an opponent. He was a mastermind, a hidden force who had orchestrated everything from the start. And if Trump tried to challenge him directly, he risked losing everything: Tesla, his influence, and his future. On the other hand, joining forces with Crane seemed like a risky proposition. What if Crane was truly the type of man who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted? What if, by aligning himself with Crane, Trump was merely setting himself up to be a pawn in a much larger game? As he sat in his office later that night, going over the events of the past few weeks, Trump realized that the decision he faced wasn't just about Tesla. It was about something far bigger: his own legacy. As dawn broke over Silicon Valley, Trump found himself standing at the edge of a precipice, staring out over the sprawling campus of Tesla. He had spent his career building his empire, and now, for the first time, he felt like it was all slipping away. But there was one thing that Trump knew above all else. He wasn't the type to be passive. He was a fighter. Jenny's words from that fateful night echoed in his mind. "There's someone higher than Bauer. Someone you haven't seen yet." That someone was Crane. But Trump had underestimated just how far Crane's influence extended, and now he had to decide whether to become part of Crane's vision or take his chances and fight back. He picked up the phone and dialed Kyle. It was time to make a decision. "Kyle," Trump said, his voice low and serious, "I need to know everything. Everything about Maxwell Crane. What do we really know about him? There was a pause on the other end of the line. You want to know about Crane? Kyle asked. You sure about that, Trump? Yeah, Trump replied, a steely determination creeping into his voice. I need to know who I'm dealing with, because if I'm going to be part of his world, I want to understand the game I'm playing. Kyle sighed. All right, you're not going to like it, but here's the thing. Maxwell Crane is not just a business guy. He's different. He's a visionary, but he's also ruthless. He doesn't play by the same rules as the rest of us. Some say he's been involved in projects that predate Tesla, in some shadowy government initiatives. Some say he's not just about the tech. He's about power. Absolute control. Trump's heart pounded. This wasn't just a corporate struggle anymore. It was about dominance, control, maybe even global influence. How do I get to him? Trump asked, voice sharp. You don't, Kyle said. Not without making some serious moves yourself. Crane doesn't let people in unless he's sure he can trust them. And even then, you'll be under his thumb. Always. Trump's jaw tightened. If he was going to make this work, he couldn't just join Crane. He needed to outsmart him. He needed to find a way to turn the tables. As the days went by, Trump immersed himself deeper into the Tesla world, attending meetings, talking to key players, trying to find any information that might give him leverage over Crane. But with every step forward, he felt more and more like a man walking through a labyrinth. No matter what he did, Crane's influence seemed to be everywhere, hidden, silent, but undeniable. One afternoon, as Trump walked through the Tesla Innovation Center, he overheard a conversation that made his heart race. A group of engineers was discussing Project X, the secretive project that had been at the center of Tesla's rise to prominence. We have to finish the prototype soon, one engineer said. Crane's not going to wait forever. Trump froze. Crane's not going to wait forever. The words repeated in his mind. This wasn't just about Tesla's future. It was about something far larger, something that could change the course of human history. He needed to know more about Project X. He needed to figure out what Crane was really after before it was too late. Every empire has its hidden truths, the ones buried so deep, even the rulers themselves don't know where to look. Trump had spent his life building, manipulating, and uncovering secrets, but nothing had prepared him for what he was about to uncover about Tesla's Project X. The deeper he dug, the more he realized. The stakes were no longer about money or power. This was something far more dangerous and far more profound. Trump's obsession with Project X had reached a fever pitch. Every conversation he overheard, every document he read, every engineer he spoke to seemed to lead to the same dead end. Vague, cryptic mentions of the prototype, the next stage, and Crane's vision. It was clear that Tesla's next big leap wasn't just about electric cars anymore. It was about something far more groundbreaking. The whispers he had caught in the corridors hinted at a game-changing technology, something that could fundamentally alter the way the world worked. But what? Was it a new form of energy? A revolutionary AI? Or something even more terrifying? Trump knew one thing for sure. Crane was at the center of it all. And if he was going to stay in the game, he needed to get to the heart of Project X before Crane could pull it out of the shadows and into the world. Trump had always been the master of perception, the king of deals and dealsmanship. He'd won some battles, lost some, but always came out with more than he started. His strategy had always been to make his opponent underestimate him, then strike when they least expected it. But Tesla was different. The rules of the game here weren't just about outsmarting your opponent. They were about understanding the future and bending it to your will. And if Trump wanted to stay in this game, he needed to understand Crane, not just as an opponent, but as a force of nature. Because Crane wasn't just playing for power. He was playing for a future that Trump could barely comprehend. Trump's latest lead took him to an unmarked door in the basement of Tesla's headquarters, hidden behind a maze of security systems and guarded by two serious-looking men. It was the kind of place that screamed, top secret, the kind of place that might hold the answers to everything Trump had been searching for. But there was no turning back now. If he was going to get to the truth about Project X, this was his chance. He had to find a way inside. Trump approached the door cautiously. The guards, standing at attention, didn't seem to notice him at first, too busy with their own conversations. He could feel the weight of the moment. This was it. This was his opportunity to uncover the key to everything. Without a word, he slipped a key card from his pocket and swiped it across the scanner beside the door. It buzzed, and the door clicked open. Inside was a dimly lit corridor, lined with concrete walls. Trump's heartbeat quickened. This felt like the kind of place where secrets were kept hidden from prying eyes, where things were done that nobody would ever want to admit to. But he wasn't here for answers that came easy. He was here to uncover the truth. He moved cautiously down the hall, stepping lightly, his eyes scanning every corner. The deeper he went, the more intense the silence became. It was as if the building itself was holding its breath. Finally, he reached the end of the hallway. Another door, this one with a heavy, reinforced lock. But it didn't stop Trump. He'd broken into buildings, into vaults, into the highest levels of government security. A locked door was nothing to him. He took a deep breath, then swiped the card again. This time, the door clicked open with a satisfying sound. Inside the room was a single computer terminal, surrounded by rows of dusty equipment. It looked like a command center, the kind of place where cutting-edge technology was tested, refined, and hidden away from the world. But what caught Trump's eye was the wall of monitors in the back of the room, displaying dozens of pieces of information he couldn't begin to make sense of. But there, in the center of the screen, was a document labeled Project X, Final Prototype. Trump's pulse raced as he approached the terminal. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He hit a few keys, and the screen flickered to life. What he saw next made his stomach drop. The document detailed a project far beyond anything Tesla had ever publicly announced. It was an energy system, a new form of quantum energy that could, in theory, power the entire planet with zero emissions. No more dependence on fossil fuels. No more pollution. No more environmental collapse. It was a utopian dream, the kind of breakthrough that could change the world. But there was a darker side to it. Embedded within the code was an algorithm designed to control the energy grid on a global scale, allowing those who controlled it to regulate who had access to power and who didn't. And it was Crane who had engineered this system. Trump's mind raced as he absorbed the implications of what he had just uncovered. This wasn't just a technology, it was a weapon of unimaginable power. If Crane succeeded in deploying Project X, he wouldn't just change the future, he would control it. And whoever controlled Project X controlled the world. Trump's first instinct was to destroy the computer, to erase the data before anyone could use it. But then he stopped himself. Destroying the technology wouldn't be enough. Crane had already anticipated that. The real question was, how could Trump use Project X to his advantage? He wasn't about to let someone like Maxwell Crane control the future of humanity. But if he played his cards right, he could turn the tables and make Crane's creation work for him. All he needed was a plan. As Trump stared at the glowing screen, something inside him clicked. He had always been a man who thrived on power. But this was bigger than anything he had ever encountered. If he wanted to win, he had to take a risk, a huge one. He turned off the terminal, closed the door behind him, and slipped back into the shadows. He knew exactly what he needed to do next. But first, he had to confront Maxwell Crane. Everything Trump had worked for led him to this moment, the moment when his empire, his future, and his legacy would be determined by a single confrontation. Maxwell Crane had always been a step ahead, but now Trump had something Crane didn't, the truth. The question was, how far was he willing to go to leverage that truth? And would it be enough to outsmart a man like Crane? Trump had never been one to shy away from a fight. But standing outside Maxwell Crane's office at Tesla's headquarters, he felt the weight of the situation like never before. He was about to confront a man who had orchestrated the biggest secret in the world, a man who controlled not just Tesla, but a vast, unseen network of influence that stretched far beyond Silicon Valley. Crane had always been the puppet master, pulling strings from behind the scenes. But now, Trump had the upper hand. He knew what Project X was, a quantum energy system with the power to change the world. But it was more than just a technology. It was a weapon, one that could give Crane the kind of control that no one should ever have. Trump's heart raced as he approached the door. Inside, he could hear the faint hum of conversation. He was ready. He had to be. This wasn't just a battle for Tesla. It was a battle for the future of the world itself. Trump had always been the dealmaker, the negotiator. He thrived on leverage, on finding the smallest piece of information and using it to shift the entire playing field in his favor. But this was different. He wasn't just fighting for money or power. He was fighting for the future, for a chance to stop Maxwell Crane from gaining control over the most powerful technology ever created. Trump's past had been defined by one simple rule: you take what you want. He'd done it through sheer force of will, with charisma, and with an undeniable belief that the world was his for the taking. But today, he wasn't going to rely on the same tactics. This time, he was going to outsmart Crane. Trump knocked sharply on the door to Crane's office. A moment later, the door opened, revealing the man himself, tall, composed, and radiating an aura of calm control. "Mr. Trump," Crane said, his tone polite but distant. "I wasn't expecting you." "I'm sure you weren't," Trump replied, stepping inside. "But we need to talk." Crane gestured toward the chair across from his desk. "Please, have a seat. I assume you've come to ask about Project X." Trump's gaze hardened. "I've come to stop it. You've taken things too far, Crane. You've built a system that could enslave the world, controlling energy, controlling everything. And I'm not going to let you do it." Crane's eyes flickered, but his expression didn't change. "You don't understand, Donald. This isn't about control. It's about saving the world. You see, the current energy system is unsustainable. The world is on the brink of collapse. Project X is the solution to all of humanity's problems." Trump shook his head. "That's what you say, but that's not what I see. I see a tool for power. You're using people's desperation to manipulate them, to create a future where only you hold the keys." Crane's smile didn't waver. "Isn't that how the world works, Mr. Trump? The strong survive and the weak, well, they do what they're told. It's always been that way." Trump's fist clenched. Crane wasn't wrong in a way. There was truth in his words. The world was chaotic, unstable, and in desperate need of change. But what Crane was proposing was a future where one man held the power to decide who lived and who suffered. And Trump couldn't let that happen. "I've seen what you've done," Trump said, his voice low but firm. "You've built a system that gives you complete control over the world's energy supply. That's not saving the world, Crane. That's enslaving it." Crane's eyes narrowed. "You're wrong, Donald. You've always been a man of profit. I'm a man of vision. And that vision will change the world for the better. You could be a part of it. All you need to do is join me." Trump stared him down. "Join you? After everything I've seen? After what you're really doing?" "No, Crane. This ends here." For a long moment, there was silence between them. Trump could feel the weight of the decision he had just made. This wasn't just about Tesla or even Project X. It was about something deeper, something more fundamental. It was about the future of freedom, of choice, and of power itself. Crane stood up from behind his desk, his expression now hard and cold. "You don't understand, Donald. You've never understood what it takes to change the world. You think you're in control, but you're not. You never have been." Trump felt a flicker of doubt, but he pushed it away. Crane was a master manipulator, and he wasn't going to fall for it. He wasn't going to be swayed by words anymore. The future wasn't something to be controlled by one man. It was something to be shared by all. "I know exactly what it takes," Trump said, "and I'm not going to let you turn the world into your personal playground. If you think I'm going to let you use Project X to create a new world order, you're wrong." Crane smiled, almost pityingly. "You think you can stop me? You really believe you can take down someone who controls the future of energy? You don't have the power, Donald. You never did." Trump felt a surge of anger. For the first time in years, someone had underestimated him. Crane was wrong. Trump did have the power. He had the power to make a deal, to outthink his opponents, and to turn the tables when the odds were against him. And this time, he wasn't going to let Crane get away with it. "I don't need your system to survive, Crane," Trump said, his voice now steady, every word filled with certainty. "I built my empire without you, and I'll destroy yours the same way." He turned toward the door, knowing that the next few steps he took would define everything. He wasn't just walking out of Crane's office. He was walking into the battle of his life. Maxwell Crane had made a deal with the future, one that would shape the world for generations to come. But in his arrogance, he underestimated the one thing that could ruin it all: Trump's willpower. Now, with everything at stake, Trump has one shot to turn the tables. But as the walls close in, Trump realizes this battle is bigger than just him. It's a battle for the world itself. Trump stepped out of Crane's office, his mind racing. He had just committed himself to a fight he knew would push him to the brink. Crane had made it clear. There was no middle ground. It was either Trump's way or nothing. And in the high-stakes world of Tesla, nothing could mean the end of everything. But Trump wasn't about to back down. He had never been one to give up, even when the odds were stacked against him. Now, more than ever, he could feel the weight of the world pressing on him. This wasn't just about Tesla anymore. It wasn't even just about Project X. This was about control, about the future of humanity itself. Trump had always been a man who played by his own rules. From his early days in real estate to his rise to power, he had built his empire on the belief that he could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast anyone who stood in his way. He knew the art of the deal better than anyone, and he had an uncanny ability to read people and situations with deadly accuracy. But Tesla was different. It was a world that didn't care about deals or influence. It was a world of science, technology, and ambition. And Maxwell Crane was a man who had taken all of that to a level Trump had never seen before. Now, Trump had one option left: beat Crane at his own game. And if he wanted to do that, he had to learn to think like Crane. Back in his private office, Trump paced, his mind working at full speed. The information he had gathered from the Tesla facility had been a game-changer. Project X wasn't just about a new form of energy, it was a global control mechanism. If Crane deployed it, the entire world's infrastructure would be at his mercy. Trump needed leverage. But what could he possibly hold over someone like Crane? He thought about it for a moment, then it hit him. If he could access Tesla's proprietary data on Project X, data that Crane believed was only accessible to his inner circle, Trump might just have a shot at turning the tables. He needed to get into Tesla's mainframe, bypassing the advanced security systems. If he could disrupt the system, if he could corrupt the data on the energy grid, he could buy himself the leverage he needed to confront Crane directly. The only problem? Tesla's security was state-of-the-art. But Trump wasn't a man who backed down from a challenge. If anyone could get through, it was him. Trump made the call to his most trusted ally, a former hacker turned tech consultant named Rick. "I need you to do something for me," Trump said, his voice steady. "Get me into Tesla's system. I need access to Project X's data, everything. I'm going to need a way to control it." Rick didn't hesitate. "You're talking about the mainframe. That's risky, Trump. You could get caught. And if you do, you'll be on every watch list in the world. This is way bigger than any deal you've made before." Trump's eyes narrowed. "I'm not asking you to get caught. I'm asking you to make sure I can get in and get out without leaving a trace." After a brief pause, Rick responded, "All right, I'll set it up. But you better be prepared for what happens next." Trump smiled. "I've never been more ready." The next few hours were a blur of calculations, blueprints, and schematics. Rick worked from a remote location, feeding Trump the access codes he needed, step by step. Trump knew it wasn't just about gaining access to the data, it was about timing. One wrong move, and the entire system would lock down. As Trump sat in his office, watching the encrypted codes on his laptop, the tension in the room seemed almost tangible. He knew this was the moment that could change everything. The risk was immense, but the reward, if he succeeded, was beyond anything he had ever dreamed of. Suddenly, a notification popped up on his screen: "Access granted." Trump's heart raced. This was it. He typed in the final set of commands, and within seconds, the data from Tesla's servers began to download to his device. Trump leaned back in his chair, staring at the stream of data that flooded his screen. The files on Project X, the blueprints for the energy system, the algorithms for controlling the global energy grid, it was all right there. Every detail, every piece of the puzzle, was now in his hands. But then something strange happened. A red warning message appeared on the screen: "Unauthorized access detected." Trump's pulse quickened. He had known the risks, but he had hoped to avoid this. Within seconds, the warning escalated, the system attempting to lock him out. "Rick," Trump said urgently into the phone, I've been compromised. Shut it down now. On the other end, Rick's voice was frantic. I'm trying. I don't know how they found out. Before Rick could finish, the screen went black. The data stream stopped, and Trump knew it was over. Or was it? Trump stood up, pacing the room again, his mind working faster than ever. This wasn't a defeat. It couldn't be. There had to be a way around this. He had come too far. He wasn't going to let Crane, or anyone, beat him now. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Rick. They've traced you. They know who you are. You need to disappear. Now. Trump froze. The message was clear. Whoever was running Tesla's security wasn't just good. They were on a whole different level. Someone had been watching, waiting for this exact moment. But who? As Trump glanced toward the window, he saw a black car pull up outside his building. It wasn't just any car. It was the unmistakable silhouette of a Tesla. The car door opened, and a figure stepped out. A figure Trump knew all too well. Maxwell Crane. With Crane closing in, Trump finds himself at the edge of a cliff. There's no turning back now. If he wants to survive and take down Maxwell Crane once and for all, he'll need to outthink him, outmaneuver him, and disappear without a trace. But can Trump escape with the world's most powerful data, or has he played his final hand? Trump stared through the glass of his office window, watching the sleek black Tesla glide into the parking lot. His mind raced. Maxwell Crane had found him. The game had changed. He wasn't just fighting to expose Crane anymore. He was fighting for his life. The data from Tesla's mainframe was still fresh in his mind. He had everything he needed, everything that could bring Crane to his knees, but it didn't matter if he didn't make it out of here alive. He couldn't let Crane know he had the files. If he did, Trump would be finished, and so would the world. He took a deep breath, then reached for his phone and dialed Rick. Rick, Trump said, his voice low and urgent. I need an extraction plan. Now. Rick didn't waste time with pleasantries. I'm on it. What's the situation? Crane knows. He's coming for me, Trump replied, glancing at the window as the Tesla pulled to a stop. I need to get out. Fast. Trump had been in tight spots before. He'd survived bankruptcy, political battles, media wars, and boardroom rivalries. He had always believed that no matter how bad things got, there was always a way out, always a deal to be made, always a backdoor to slip through. But today, things were different. Today, the stakes were higher than they had ever been. If he didn't make it out, Project X would fall into Crane's hands, and the world would be irrevocably changed. For the first time, Trump felt the weight of what was at stake. It wasn't just his empire anymore. It was the future of the planet. Trump grabbed his laptop and shoved it into his bag. He couldn't afford to leave anything behind. He had to move quickly. The Tesla parked outside wasn't just a car. It was a signal. A signal that someone inside was about to enter the building, and Trump couldn't let them catch him. He sprinted to the back door, but before he could exit, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. He froze. It was too late. They were here. Trump glanced around the office. The back stairwell was his only chance. He ran toward it, his heart racing, pushing the door open just as he heard voices approaching the main entrance. The voices grew louder, and Trump pushed forward. Each step felt heavier than the last, but he didn't stop. He knew he had no choice. As Trump descended the stairs, his mind raced through the options. Rick had set up a rendezvous point at a nearby safe house, but the question was, how would he make it there without being spotted? Tesla's security was sophisticated. It wasn't just a matter of slipping out unnoticed. The building was likely crawling with agents, and there were too many ways to be caught. Trump needed a distraction, a way to draw attention away from his escape. He looked around. The stairwell was empty, but the building's lower levels were a maze. If he could get to the underground parking lot, he could commandeer one of Tesla's unmarked vehicles and make his way to the safe house. Just then, he heard it. The unmistakable sound of an elevator ding. Maxwell Crane had arrived. Trump's heart skipped a beat. If Crane was here, that meant the clock was ticking even faster. Trump's options were running out. Trump reached the bottom of the stairs and sprinted through the hallways, ignoring the distant sound of footsteps echoing in the distance. He had to move fast. He turned a corner and found himself in the security office. a room filled with surveillance monitors showing every inch of Tesla's property. He quickly scanned the room, spotting the security guard sitting behind a desk, oblivious to the approaching danger. Trump's instincts kicked in. He could knock the guard out and steal his uniform. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it might just buy him enough time to slip past Crane's men and out of the building unnoticed. Without hesitation, Trump grabbed the nearest object, a metal coffee mug, and used it to knock the guard out cold. He quickly grabbed the guard's uniform and pulled it on, hoping to blend in. Dressed in the security guard's uniform, Trump felt a surge of adrenaline. This wasn't his style, but he didn't have the luxury of time to second-guess himself. He needed to move fast, and blending in was his best chance. He stepped out of the security office, trying to act casual, his eyes scanning the hallways. It was all about looking confident, looking like he belonged. He couldn't afford to let anyone see through the disguise. Trump rounded a corner and nearly collided with a Tesla employee who was walking briskly in the opposite direction. The employee looked him up and down but didn't say a word, continuing on his way. Trump breathed a sigh of relief. He was in the clear, for now. Just as Trump reached the back exit of the building, a voice called out behind him. "Hey, you there." Trump froze. His heart slammed against his chest. It was one of Crane's men. For a split second, everything seemed to stop. Trump turned slowly, his mind racing for a solution. The man was still too far away for Trump to make a break for it, but not far enough for him to avoid being caught if he didn't act fast. Trump could feel the pressure building. He had seconds to make a decision: run and risk getting caught, or turn and face the man directly. He took a deep breath. It was now or never. With a sudden burst of energy, Trump spun around, moving faster than the man could react. In one smooth motion, he grabbed the man's collar, pulling him into the shadows of the stairwell. He didn't have much time. He had to knock him out and keep moving. Trump's hands worked quickly, his mind calculating every move. In a flash, the man was down, unconscious on the floor. Trump didn't waste another second. He moved toward the exit, heart pounding in his chest, and as the doors opened to the outside world, he caught a glimpse of the sleek black Tesla idling near the curb. Maxwell Crane had arrived, and now Trump was on the run. With Maxwell Crane closing in and the data from Tesla's mainframe in his hands, Trump finds himself in a desperate race against time. The safe house is his only hope, but can he get there before Crane's men find him? And what awaits him inside? This may be the last chance Trump has to outsmart Crane, but nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Trump ducked into the alley behind the Tesla building, heart hammering in his chest. He could still hear the distant hum of the Tesla parked at the front, its engines purring like a predator on the prowl. Maxwell Crane's men were closing in. If Trump didn't make it to the safe house now, everything he'd fought for would be lost, and so would his life. The streets were filled with pedestrians going about their business, oblivious to the high-stakes game unfolding just beneath their noses. Trump tried to blend in, walking briskly but casually, his eyes scanning for any sign of danger. He had no idea how long he had before Crane's team realized he was gone, but he knew it wouldn't be long. Trump had spent his life making calculated decisions, reading people, knowing when to push forward and when to retreat. But now, the rules were different. He wasn't just playing the art of the deal anymore. He was playing for survival. And in the world of Tesla's corporate espionage and global control, Trump was out of his depth. But if there was one thing Trump had learned over the years, it was how to adapt. He was resourceful, tenacious, and had an uncanny ability to think on his feet. He had been through enough close calls to know that when the odds were stacked against you, it was all about finding the right opportunity to strike. Trump's phone buzzed in his pocket, and he quickly fished it out. It was a text from Rick. "I've set up a safe house at 1323 Pine Street. It's isolated, and the back alley is clear. Get there now. If you don't, we're out of options." Trump looked up at the street signs. Pine Street was just a few blocks away, but it might as well have been miles. He had no time to waste. He glanced over his shoulder, watching for any sign of pursuit, then picked up his pace. As he turned the corner, a flash of movement caught his eye. A black SUV sped past him, its tinted windows concealing the passengers inside. Trump froze. His instincts screamed that they were after him. He ducked into the nearest storefront, hiding behind a rack of jackets. His breath caught in his throat as he listened intently. The SUV had slowed, but it wasn't stopping. Trump peered out through the glass, watching the vehicle turn the corner down the street. He wasn't sure if they'd seen him, but he couldn't take any chances. He stepped back into the street, quickening his pace. Pine Street was only 2 blocks away, but with every step, the pressure mounted. The streets seemed to stretch on forever. Trump's mind raced as he calculated the risks of every move. If the SUV was really after him, he wouldn't be able to outrun it on foot. The best he could do was make it to the safe house, where Rick would have a plan ready. But what if it was too late? What if Crane had already anticipated this move? What if the safe house wasn't safe after all? Trump's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. He turned to see a man in a suit, walking briskly toward him. Trump's heart skipped a beat. He didn't recognize the man, but the urgency in his gait told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't just a passerby. This was someone after him. Trump didn't hesitate. He darted into an alleyway, heart pounding. The man followed, and for a split second, Trump thought he might be cornered. But then, something unexpected happened. The man stopped in his tracks, looking left and right as if confused. Trump kept moving, but his thoughts were racing. What had just happened? Why had the man stopped? Trump didn't waste time contemplating the strange encounter. He needed to get to the safe house and fast. He emerged from the alley onto Pine Street, the darkened road offering only the faintest glow of streetlights. The safe house wasn't far now, but Trump felt the weight of every second. It wasn't just the Tesla data that was at risk, it was his entire future. If Crane caught him now, everything would be over. Just as he rounded the final corner onto Pine Street, a bright light flashed in his peripheral vision. It was the black SUV. They had found him. Trump's heart raced. He had no choice now but to run. He sprinted down Pine Street, turning down a side street just before the SUV could pull up alongside him. He could hear the engine rev behind him, the sound of the tires screeching against the pavement. The SUV wasn't slowing down. Trump pushed himself harder, his legs burning from the exertion. He had to make it to the safe house. Out of the corner of his eye, Trump saw the safe house, a nondescript brownstone nestled between 2 high-rise buildings. The door was slightly ajar. He was so close, but as he reached for the door, a hand gripped his shoulder from behind. Trump whirled around, his heart in his throat. It was the man from earlier, the one who had been following him. "You don't want to go in there," the man said in a low, urgent voice. Trump's mind was spinning. Was this an ally? An enemy? What was going on? The SUV was now just a few feet away, the sound of its engine growing louder by the second. "Who are you?" Trump demanded, his voice tight with fear. "I'm here to help," the man said quickly, "but we don't have much time." Trump glanced at the door. Could he trust this stranger? Was this some kind of trap? But the sound of the SUV's engine was now right on top of them, and Trump knew he had no choice. He followed the man down a narrow alley beside the building, the darkened passage offering little comfort. They ran in silence, Trump's heart pounding, not just from the physical exertion, but from the realization that he was in deeper than he had ever been. The man led Trump to an underground entrance hidden beneath an old dumpster. With a quick glance to ensure no one was watching, the man pulled open the steel door, revealing a dimly lit stairwell that led downward. Trump hesitated, his mind racing. "What's going on? Who are you?" The man gave him a sharp look. "If you want to live, you'll follow me. Trust me, you're not safe yet." With no other option, Trump followed him into the darkness. The door slammed shut behind them. Trapped in an underground maze with a mysterious ally, Trump's world is turned upside down. As secrets unfold, the lines between friend and foe blur. Can he trust the man who saved him? Or is this just another trap set by Maxwell Crane? The stakes have never been higher, and the truth might be darker than Trump ever imagined. Trump's footsteps echoed down the narrow, dimly lit corridor, his mind spinning with a million questions. The man leading him, whoever he was, hadn't said a word since they entered the underground bunker. The steel door had slammed shut behind them with a finality that made Trump's heart race. There was no turning back now. He was in too deep. They descended further, the air growing colder, the shadows thickening around them. Trump felt the weight of every step, every breath. The world he had known, his empire, his plans, his alliances, was quickly disintegrating. All that mattered now was survival. And to survive, Trump needed answers. He turned to the man beside him. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with suspicion. "And why should I trust you?" The man didn't look at him, his gaze focused on the dark path ahead. "You don't have much of a choice," he replied. "I'm not your enemy, at least not in the way you think. But if you're looking for answers, you're going to have to keep moving." Trump clenched his jaw. There was something about the man's voice, something that made him believe he wasn't lying. But that didn't mean he trusted him. Trust had always been a currency Trump dealt in cautiously, and right now, he was bankrupt. They finally reached the bottom of the stairs, stepping into a room filled with monitors, old computer equipment, and a map of the city on the wall, covered in red markers and pins. The place looked like something out of a spy movie, except this wasn't a movie. This was real, and Trump had no idea what he had gotten himself into. The man stopped in front of a workbench, turning to face Trump. "We don't have much time," he said. "Crane is more dangerous than you think. He's not just a businessman. He's been orchestrating something much bigger, and it involves you." Trump had spent his life building an empire on information. He was always a few steps ahead of the competition, whether in business or politics. But this was different. This wasn't about the next big deal or a corporate takeover. This was about power, control, and a hidden war that Trump had never even known he was part of. As he looked around the bunker, Trump realized how little he truly understood. Maxwell Crane's reach went deeper than he could have ever imagined. The stakes were far beyond anything he had ever prepared for. This wasn't just about his own survival. It was about the future of everything he had worked to build. The man gestured toward the monitors. "Crane doesn't just run Tesla. He's using it as a front for something much larger. Project X isn't just about cutting-edge technology. It's about reshaping the world. And the data you've got from Tesla's mainframe? It's just the tip of the iceberg." Trump's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean? And why do you think I care about some data?" The man turned toward him, his expression intense. "Because the data you have is the key to everything. It's the key to stopping Crane before he can launch his plan. But you're not the only one after it." Trump felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you talking about?" The man took a deep breath, walking over to a desk cluttered with papers and gadgets. "There's more going on here than you realize. Tesla wasn't just making electric cars. They were working on something far more dangerous. A global network, a surveillance system, and the ability to manipulate the very flow of information. Crane wasn't just going to dominate markets. He was going to control the world." Trump shook his head. "No, that doesn't make sense. Tesla's just a car company." The man looked at him with a mixture of pity and disbelief. "That's what they want you to think. Tesla's cars were always secondary to their real goal. The cars were a cover, a way to collect data from every person, every city, every government. And now, Crane's ready to activate it. He just needed one thing, the right person to unlock the final phase of Project X." Trump took a step back, his mind spinning. "You're saying I'm part of his plan?" The man nodded slowly. "Yes. You've been targeted by Crane for years, Trump. You've been part of his plan without even knowing it. Every deal you made, every venture you took, every business move, it all led to this moment." Trump felt like the floor was falling out from under him. His entire life, everything he had built, had been manipulated. He had been a pawn in a much bigger game. The weight of that realization crushed him. It was one thing to fight for power. It was another to realize that someone else had been pulling the strings all along. "Why didn't you stop him sooner?" Trump's voice was sharp, the anger bubbling up inside him. "Why didn't you warn me?" The man sighed, his face darkening. "I've been trying to. But Crane's influence is vast. He has agents everywhere, in every major corporation, every government. Stopping him is like trying to plug holes in a sinking ship with nothing but your hands." Trump clenched his fists. "I'm not backing down. I don't care what Crane's plan is. I'm taking him down." The man eyed him, then gave a short nod. "I thought you'd say that. Good. But if you're going to take him down, you need to know one thing. You can't do it alone. You're not just fighting Crane. You're fighting his entire network. And they're everywhere. You're already marked Trump. The moment you grabbed that data, you signed your death sentence. If you want to survive, you need to think like Crane. You need to use the tools he's been using for years. Trump was silent for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the situation. He wasn't just facing one enemy. He was facing a global conspiracy, a network so entrenched that even his most powerful resources were no match for it. "You've got to be kidding me," Trump muttered, pacing around the room. "This can't be happening." The man didn't answer. Instead, he went to the wall and started pulling up more files. "You're not the only one with enemies, Trump. You've got other players in this game, some of them more dangerous than Crane. If you want to win, you need to be strategic." Suddenly, the lights flickered. The screens on the wall went blank for a brief moment before they powered back up, but something had changed. Trump could feel the shift in the air, a sense of impending danger. The man turned sharply toward him, his face pale. "We've got company," the man said, his voice low. "It's Crane's people. They found us." Trump's blood ran cold. They were already here. Before Trump could react, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway outside the room. Fast, deliberate. It was too late to escape. The man grabbed Trump's arm. "We need to move. Now." But as Trump turned toward the exit, the door burst open. Standing in the doorway was none other than Maxwell Crane, flanked by two armed bodyguards. With the lights out and the power compromised, Trump's final move hangs by a thread. But in the darkest hour, a twist no one saw coming threatens to shatter everything. Can Trump stop Crane's twisted plan before it's too late? Or will he be the one to destroy the last hope for humanity's freedom? The room was plunged into pitch-black darkness, the hum of the servers and the clicking of the computer keyboards suddenly gone. Trump's pulse thundered in his ears. He could hear nothing except the soft thud of his own breath and the rustling of the guards' footsteps, but their position was unclear in the suffocating void. Crane's voice cut through the silence, cold and commanding. "You're out of time, Trump. The data you stole? It doesn't matter anymore. You're too late." Trump's hand tightened around the USB drive. His vision was blurry in the blackness, but his instincts were sharper than ever. He couldn't let Crane have the last word. Not now. Not when everything he'd worked for was at stake. For a moment, he considered using the last of his leverage, the data. But then, his mind snapped back to the danger around him. He was trapped in a dark, underground facility with no way to communicate with the outside world, no backup. If he was going to survive this, he had to act fast. With a deep breath, Trump scrambled to his feet, instinctively heading toward the nearest wall. His fingers brushed along the cold concrete, feeling for any kind of switch, any emergency lighting. He needed to get control of the situation. If he didn't, all would be lost. For decades, Trump had fought to keep control of every situation. Whether it was a business negotiation or a political firestorm, he had always managed to keep the upper hand. But now, faced with the full weight of Crane's conspiracy, he realized just how fragile that control had always been. The rules were different here. There were no boardrooms, no cameras. There was only the fight for survival. Crane had already manipulated the system, infiltrating not just Tesla but every facet of global infrastructure. What Trump didn't know, what he never could have imagined, was that his entire life had been orchestrated from behind the scenes. Every major deal, every political move. The world he knew wasn't real. It had been a carefully constructed illusion, with Crane pulling the strings. Now, Trump had to come to terms with the fact that the battle was bigger than just a corporate rivalry. This wasn't about outsmarting a competitor. This was about saving the world, or watching it fall into chaos. Trump's fingers brushed over a metal switch. He flicked it without hesitation, and a low, red emergency light blinked on, casting an eerie glow over the room. The flickering light revealed Crane, standing motionless, his eyes gleaming in the dim glow. The two bodyguards were no longer visible, but Trump could hear the faint shuffle of their footsteps, moving around him like predators closing in. "I told you." Crane's voice was softer now, almost pitying. "You've lost. The moment you took that data, you sealed your fate. It's too late to stop me." Trump's mind raced. He was running out of options. The power surge earlier had been a calculated move. Crane had activated a failsafe to stop the data transfer, making sure Trump couldn't get the full picture. But Trump still had a piece of it. The key to everything was still in his hand. "Maybe you think so," Trump said, forcing his voice to steady, despite the tension. "But I'm not done yet." Suddenly, a loud crashing sound came from the back of the room, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone shouting. Trump spun toward the noise, his heart in his throat. It was the sound of a fight, one he hadn't expected. The bodyguards were distracted. Without wasting a second, Trump rushed toward the sound, his feet pounding on the concrete floor. As he rounded the corner, he saw one of the guards struggling with the man who had been helping him, his mysterious ally. Trump's eyes widened. The ally had turned on him. The man had betrayed him. The fight was chaotic, desperate, but the guard had the upper hand. Trump's stomach churned as he watched the man he'd trusted struggle beneath the brute strength of the bodyguard. But in that moment, Trump knew what he had to do. The ally had warned him of Crane's vast network, of the far-reaching arms of the conspiracy. He wasn't just a bystander in this game. He had been a part of it all along. Trump's hands clenched into fists as he made a split-second decision. "Enough," Trump bellowed, his voice ringing with authority. He grabbed a metal pipe from the floor and swung it with all his might at the guard, hitting him square in the chest. The guard stumbled back, momentarily stunned. The ally gasped for air, his face pale and covered in sweat. You don't understand. It's too late. He's already won." Trump didn't care. He wasn't going to let this betrayal define him. He wasn't going to let Crane win. Trump turned, facing Crane once again. But this time he wasn't backing down. "You think this ends here?" Trump said, his voice sharp and full of determination. "This isn't over." Crane, watching the entire scene unfold with cold detachment, gave a slow, condescending clap. "Impressive. But it doesn't change the fact that you're out of your depth, Trump. You think you're fighting for freedom, but you're only fighting for your own survival. The world as you know it is over. Project X will change everything." Trump took a deep breath, his heart pounding. He had to buy time. The final data was still locked away in his head, still waiting for the moment when it could finally expose the full extent of Crane's operation. "If you want to change the world, Crane," Trump said, stepping forward, "you've underestimated one thing. People like me don't quit. We fight until the end." Crane's smirk faltered for a moment. Then, with an almost imperceptible shift in his demeanor, he spoke. "You're right. You do fight to the end. That's what makes you dangerous. But this time, Trump, there will be no comeback. You can't win." Just as Crane's words hung in the air, the emergency lights flickered again, this time brighter, signaling something more than just a power surge. A loud whirring noise filled the room, the sound of machinery coming to life. Trump's heart skipped a beat as the monitors around the room lit up, one after another, showing footage of various locations around the world. Government buildings, corporations, key financial hubs. The data was spreading. It was already happening. Project X was no longer theoretical. It was being activated. Crane stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with cold satisfaction. "It's done, Trump. The world is mine." Trump's blood ran cold. His worst fear was coming true. Crane had already begun rolling out his global network, the one thing Trump couldn't stop. The full scope of Project X was no longer just a distant possibility. It was unfolding before his eyes. With the conspiracy now in full swing, Trump faces the ultimate test of his survival. His options are running out, and time is slipping away. Will he be able to expose Crane's global network before it's too late? Or has the world already fallen into the hands of a madman? The final showdown is here. Trump stared at the glowing screens around him, watching in horror as Project X continued to unfold. The global network was alive, operating on a scale that he had never imagined. From financial markets to government systems, every part of the world's infrastructure was being controlled by Crane's new order. It was too late to stop it. Or was it? Crane's smirk remained, his face a mask of cold triumph. "It's over, Trump. You fought well, but the game is done. The data is out there now. The world's future is mine to command." Trump gritted his teeth, his mind racing. Everything he had fought for, every battle, every risk, had led him here, to this moment. There was no way out of this, no simple escape. He had no backup, no allies, just himself and his instincts. But one thing was clear. Crane might have controlled the data, but Trump still controlled one crucial thing: the narrative. "You're wrong," Trump said, his voice steely. "It's not over. You think you've won, but you don't understand how this works. People fight back. People always fight back." Crane's laughter was chilling, but Trump saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. For the first time, Crane was hesitating. He had underestimated Trump's resilience, and that would be his downfall. Trump had always believed in his own brand of power, the will to survive, the ability to outlast anyone who tried to take him down. But this was different. This wasn't just about wealth, influence, or control. This was about something much larger. It was about the future of humanity, the future of freedom. And Trump knew that if he didn't stop Crane now, nothing would ever be the same again. But in this final confrontation, Trump wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for everyone who had ever believed in the idea of free will, in the power of individuals to shape their own destinies. Crane stepped toward Trump, his eyes narrowing. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't about freedom. It's about survival. I've created a system that can evolve, adapt, and keep the world in check. A system where chaos no longer reigns. A system I control." Trump felt a rush of anger flood through him. He wasn't hearing a man who believed in a better world. He was hearing a dictator, a tyrant, a man who would sacrifice everything for control. And Trump wasn't going to let that happen. "You think you can control the world? You think people will just follow your lead? You're dreaming. People want freedom, Crane. They want a chance to live on their own terms." Trump's voice was growing louder, stronger with each word. "And that's something you'll never have. You'll never have the power to control their will." Crane's lips curled into a sneer. "We'll see about that. I've already won. Project X is too deep. It's too embedded in every facet of the world. You're too late." Trump didn't flinch. "Then let's see if the world agrees with you." Suddenly, the hum of machinery around them grew louder, as if it were preparing for something monumental. Trump's eyes scanned the room, his mind calculating the odds. There had to be a way to shut it all down. The network wasn't just a tool of control, it was a machine. And machines had weaknesses. Trump turned, his eyes locking onto the main server terminal. A thought struck him, and the pieces fell into place. The data, what Crane didn't know, what Trump hadn't fully realized until now, wasn't just a key to the conspiracy. It was the key to undoing it all. In his hand, Trump held the USB drive, the last shred of resistance. If he could get to the terminal, he could override Crane's system, inject a virus that would take down everything. But it wasn't going to be easy. The countdown had already begun. And if Trump didn't act fast, the network would be fully operational within minutes, cementing Crane's power for good. Trump turned toward the terminal, a fierce determination in his eyes. "You think I can't stop you, Crane? I'll show you how wrong you are." Crane's hand shot out, signaling to his bodyguards. "No one touches that terminal," he ordered. Trump didn't wait. In one fluid motion, he sprinted across the room, the sound of his shoes slapping against the floor echoing in the silence. The bodyguards moved fast, but Trump was faster. He dived behind a desk, narrowly dodging a bullet that whizzed past him. His pulse raced. He had to reach the terminal. His fingers fumbled with the USB drive, but there was no time to waste. Trump leapt onto the terminal, slotting the drive into the port as alarms blared around the room. The system was detecting the intrusion, but it was too late. The virus was already uploading. Just as the progress bar hit 50%, the room's lights flickered once again, and the entire building seemed to tremble. Then, a deep, mechanical voice filled the air, cold and disembodied. "Intruder detected. Override in progress. System integrity compromised." Crane's face twisted with rage as he realized what was happening. "No, you can't. This isn't possible." Trump's heart was pounding as he watched the progress bar inch closer to 100%. The virus was taking hold. The system was beginning to break down. And with it, Crane's dream of global control. But just as the upload neared completion, The building's lights went out completely. Darkness enveloped the room. Trump's heart skipped a beat. Had the system been destroyed? Or was there something else going on? A loud crash echoed through the facility, followed by a series of rapid footsteps. Someone was coming.